Yeah, and I also think it's very strange that people don't immediately understand how important earth sciences is, because we are literally all living on this planet. We all everything we use comes from this planet. Everything we do, every threat from this planet, like floodings and climate change and sea level rise, is everything we study here.
Yeah.
And then they want to close this down.
Yeah.
And it also feels like a term of short-minded decision, and
Very
people
much.
don't look into the future like this.
Welcome to the Geo Show. I'm sitting here with Stella Van Hoogstraaten, student of Earth Science at Utrecht University, as well as Brecht Reintsema, who is the initiator of the Save the Earth Science Foundation. And she's been actually pretty important lately because, as we know from our previous talk with Jan Smit, the VU Amsterdam, one of the largest earth science departments in the country, has decided to completely close down. And she knows all the details about this. She knows all the people involved. And she's going to talk about some very strange decisions that have been made by some very, I don't know, let's say people on the background or whatever, how would you like to call it. So to start off, let's just give like a sort of a narrative, like at what point did these problems become apparent? At what point did it become like serious? Like, can you give like a bit of a timeline on what exactly happened?
Yeah, so sadly, this process has been quite long. So we've been in uncertainty, in quite a lot of stress for a long time, both the students and the staff. And it started at basically the beginning of last year. There were some signs of the beta faculty that all the departments had to include some budget cuts, had to cut down in their expenses. But it was about June last year that the reorganization of earth sciences was first announced, and there the beta faculty board said that about 15 to 20 staff members of the earth science department would have to be fired, likely.
Which is about half.
Which is about half.
Yeah.
People were already very concerned about
Very
that.
drastic already.
Very drastic, didn't agree with it. But fast forward to April this year, so a month ago, they announced that they want to cut out the whole department, which is firing 42 permanent staff members and leaving a lot of students and PhD students without basically anything. So you can imagine that we don't really agree with that.
Yeah. That's a fairly intense decision.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that this decision was quite abrupt. So you started your foundation well over a year ago when the initial problems became apparent.
Yeah.
And did you at that time have any sense that the entire department was going to disappear?
No. So the reason that we started with the action group is because we want to make clear that earth sciences is incredibly important for the Netherlands, for basically the whole world. And one of our main issues was that the decisions made by the faculty board didn't really make sense, either financially or strategically. And because the faculty board doesn't include people with an earth science background, which is very different from how Utrecht has a geoscience faculty, we felt like we sort of had to explain to them, like, maybe this isn't a great decision.
So Jan Smit last week, he made this comment that the head of the faculty, the head of the beta faculty, he wanted to get rid of petrology because he thought petroleum and oil and gas is no longer popular. Now, everybody who doesn't know, petrology is the science of rocks. It has absolutely nothing to do directly with oil and gas.
Well, one of the main things that we see now is there's quite some public communication about this reorganization, and it's a very greenwashing-esque because, for example, they say that with cutting out the whole earth science department, including a lot of climate scientists, they say that they strengthen their core expertise of climate and earth because they keep a few climate scientists and they add them to the Institute of Environmental Science, which is a very different, non-really fundamentally scientific department. And they just say like, oh, we fire all these people, but we strengthen our climate research, which is really almost like rude to all the staff that you fire. And they also say that they only want to focus on climate in the current time and in the future. So they don't understand that to make a climate model, you need paleoclimate information, which is what all these people do. So that's super frustrating for us.
So this is like, so what I really like you to sort of get into is this sort of miscommunication. What sort of people are making these decisions, and what is not really getting through to them? Like, what is behind this whole counterintuitive series of decisions?
In my personal experience, it feels like a very, almost like a very business-like situation. So if you look at it, Earth Sciences at the VU is not a super big department. We have labs that are slightly expensive. We have students that have very good but also quite intensive education. So that costs money. But as a university, you have these programs, this research that is super important, including Earth Sciences, and you make sure that that has a space at your university. And now it feels like they sort of go for the easy option, which is to just cut it out completely, instead of looking at the plans that are also there, an alternative plan made by the department and the Faculty Works Council, which also has some budget cuts, has some changes, but keeps this fundamental department at the VU.
That's your alternative
that's
plan.
our
Yeah,
alternative.
yeah. And you and others, like I assume professionals, professors, drafted this plan. At which point in time?
So I wasn't personally involved because I'm essentially just a student, but it was the management team and the Faculty Works Council that made this sometime the last few months.
But these are academics, right?
These are academics, and also like a manager person, people that know what they're talking about as well.
People who know the difference between petroleum and petrology.
Yes, yes, definitely.
Okay, but this plan ignored? Was it ever reviewed properly by anyone?
So the faculty board did look at it, and they said it wasn't viable.
Inviable.
Yeah, it wasn't viable, so
Yeah,
it wasn't, but never really clear why. And so we are still actually, and the Works Council as well is still having conversations about this, because they're also very frustrated. Like, why do you not listen to our advice, basically? Yeah. So it's all very messy. I think that's a good way of putting it.
And wouldn't it help if somebody from your department would be in the faculty board to be able to look over these decisions?
Honestly, yes, I'm very jealous that you have your own geoscience faculty, because, and no offense to the people in our faculty board, they have their own expertise, but I do think it's super helpful to have people make the decisions that actually know about the research, education and stuff like that, and don't just look at the numbers. Because for us now, it really feels as if it's just looking at the numbers, and they say, yes, we think you're very important, but we don't see that in their decisions, which is very frustrating.
Yeah, because in Utrecht, the geology is sort of the Illuminati of the university, because a lot of the rector magnificens are a part of the current Wilco Hazeleker is also he was the dean of geoscience, and now he just became the.
I wish we
and
had that.
Bert van der Zwaan was a geologist, quite a prominent geologist, and he was rector as well. So I guess there's maybe a little bit more of a culture of geology here. Do you think that I mean, it's obviously a problem, but is that the core problem here, or?
I don't really know what the core problem is. I think it's definitely part of it, but as I said, it's so messy. So for us, it's like there is an alternative plan. That makes sense. We do very important stuff. We have very motivated students that do all these important things when they graduate. And that's what makes it so frustrating, is that we don't understand why they choose to do this super drastic decision, because it costs a lot of money as well. A reorganization costs millions of euros, actually. And there is this grant, Dept NWO grant for a very important
Dutch,
lab.
Science, like the National Science Foundation.
A grant of also, I think, 4 to 5 million euros for a lab that's currently being built in a new facility. And the timing is also horrible, as you can see. So they're building this lab, and now the VU is saying, oh, we signed that, but we want to cut out your department, so we're not going to continue building that lab. But they will have to pay those 4 million euros to NWO because they already said so. So they basically throw away millions of euros because they don't finish that lab. And that makes that the whole reorganization will cost about 10 million euros, which is insane. The thing with that lab is that it's very specific. So that's also one of the issues with that. The faculty board members don't really know much about earth sciences, is that they say, oh, it can be used for something else. But it cannot really be used for anything else. And it's also a unique lab in the Netherlands. So a lot of research that we have, it's also used by forensic science, used by het Rijksmuseum as well. Cool. Archaeology, it does like isotope stuff. They will also not be able to do that in the Netherlands anymore. So it's a super important lab. Yeah, so we give all these signs like, okay, please think about the effects of what your decision will have, and we just don't really get the satisfying answers back.
So yeah, so your experience as, you know, this initiator of this foundation is basically you're talking to a wall. Is that your experience?
Yes. So we've had some information sessions that we actually sort of had to, first we had to protest, then we got an information session. We asked for information at the beginning. The faculty board was like, no, we will not give you information. Then we had our rouwstoet, like we walked around campus with like a funerary. And then we sent some semi-angry emails, and then they were like, no, of course we want to give you information. Then we got an information session. Then they didn't answer our questions. And it's sort of like going like that. So they say, please ask us questions. We ask the questions, and then we don't receive any answers. Or they say, we will only give a few answers about education, but we will ignore all your other questions about transparency, about finance, about...
It's so mysterious to me. Like, I mean, I always have the sense that I can just send an email to the faculty. Like, I can just, I do it all the time. Like, I send an email to the dean or whatever. But it's so strange to me that in a university, you know, it's in the name, university. It's like it's a commonplace that there's such extreme managerial barriers there. It's very unusual. Yeah. Or actually, I don't know if that's unusual. It's just my experience is just so different.
Yeah, and I think again, it's the difference that we have this very large beta faculty that we are only a small part of, which makes the hierarchy also a little bit more complicated, I think. And yeah, it makes it difficult for us to be part of the process, which I think is very important with such a very, such a decision that has so much influence on our daily lives, basically.
Yeah. And I can imagine some of the companies that you will probably work for later also not very happy with this decision. So do you also get some support from them?
We get a lot of support from outsiders. That's actually very, very helpful for us. There was actually an NOS article a week or two back that's also like titled that the field calls for alarm, because obviously there's a lot of call for earth scientists because there's so many things that we have to do in the Netherlands, and people are worried if this whole department will just cease to exist, that we will not have that group of students that would usually fill those jobs. We have quite a lot of contact with Bob Hogedoorn from the KNGNG, the field association, I don't know how you call it. The Union of Geologists, basically. He's also very vocal about all of this, and we get a lot of LinkedIn messages, people saying, how can we help? We actually have this petition that's signed by 10,000 people already, which is very cool.
Including me.
Thank you. If you haven't signed it yet, please do it. No, so that's also part of the bigger frustration. Everybody that knows what we're talking about is saying, this is irresponsible, we cannot do this. But the VU has also not talked with these people. They have said, can we just sit around a table, discuss how this works, also with the executive board, and that hasn't been done. They've just sort of like ignored these calls.
Yeah, because we feel like the whole of the Netherlands is going to notice this in the future when there are no longer earth scientists to work at these extremely important jobs.
Yeah, and that's one of the points that we try to make. Like, please, we do important stuff. Let us do our important stuff. And also, because we have so little earth sciences in the Netherlands to begin with, if you compare it to, I think, for example, Germany or the UK, the amount of earth science education you have per capita, basically, is so much higher in those countries compared to the Netherlands, even though you have all these signs now that we need more geologists for the energy transition, for things like sustainable mining and rare earth materials. We need more climate scientists, obviously, hydrologists. So everything points towards we should have more earth scientists, and then you make a decision like this.
It's very unusual.
It's very unusual, and it's very...
Because just for the viewer, so the Netherlands, let's say a generation ago, probably had about 7 earth science departments. So in Groningen there was an earth science department, Leiden. Now, in this time, we basically, essentially only have 2.
Yeah.
So the whole country has 2 earth science, which is crazy.
And if this plan goes through, we will only have 1.
No. Well, I can. Delft is also has
fair.
an earth science department, but okay, well, it's more sort of geotechnical engineering, geoscience. If you disregard that, if you say that's not earth science, then there's literally 1 earth science department in the whole country.
Yeah.
Which is crazy talk. Like, how many earth science departments exist in England?
So many. I feel like every university has an earth science department.
Over there, though, things have closed down. My old faculty, Brighton, that closed down.
Really? Earth science also is gone. Wow.
And also for the reason that it costs too much money.
I actually don't even know the reason. I think the enrollment just wasn't high enough, and it's a separate topic, but the UK has also been hit by this, basically.
Yeah, so imagine, because then let's say Utrecht is the only remaining vestige of geology. That just makes it extremely vulnerable. Because, I mean, things happen, right? Like, there's reorganization, there's financial thing, politics, whatever.
Yeah.
But if there's only 1 left, the whole field could literally disappear.
Yeah, and that's also one of
It's just strange for a country that is below sea level.
Yeah. That's also one of the
Really
things
unusual,
that's so difficult for a university, can make this very, I almost want to say, business-like decision. This costs money. It's very efficient for us to just cut out this whole department, but they don't have to take responsibility for the effects that this has for the whole country, basically. And that's very worrying if you end up with a situation that you only have this 1 department left. Yeah. And I think, they should sort of listen to, because a lot of people from Utrecht are also saying, please don't do this, because we also need them.
Yeah. There's absolutely no sentiment that you're sort of a competitor, and absolutely not. Like, we work a lot, like you just mentioned, your thesis involves some of my colleagues. And I mean, I've actually done courses and I work with people from VU. So it's all part of the one community that is being severely impacted by these sort of mysterious decisions.
Their own specific expertise. Yeah. So what I said about that lab, for example, that's the only, geochemical lab is the only one in the Netherlands. Yeah. So the effects of just cutting out something like that is obviously very, very big.
Affecting adjacent fields like archaeology.
Yeah.
So one thing you just mentioned before we started is that this decision is officially still a preliminary decision, right? So I've read all the articles, NOS, nobody mentions this, but it's kind of an important detail.
It was actually the first day, so the 3rd of April, we all remember as a sort of traumatic experience when the reorganization was made public and shared with us as well. The first articles were actually sort of these press articles by the VU, which really just said, this is what we're doing, it's inevitable, and all of that. And it was only the Volkskrant, NOS, and NRC also slightly that actually listened to us as students and staff, and that we were saying no, it's a preliminary decision, and it is not financially, it doesn't make sense financially, and all of that. And it took a while for them to sort of listen to us. So now you do have some articles that say, okay, it's preliminary. But that was also quite a bit complicated, yeah.
But so, is there any chance to salvage any of this, or you're basically given up all hope?
Well,
I mean, you've done a funerary, so.
That was symbolic. No, we're actually very active with our action group and still fighting against this preliminary decision.
You're even on the Geo Show. So
we're even on a Geo Show.
You've reached the peak of geoscience media.
No, so we have a strategy to make as many people aware as we can, be it geoscientists, people outside, politicians, anything, to give this signal, VU, don't do this. And we hope that if that signal is large enough, if it comes from outside and inside, so also through the Works Council and all of that, we hope we can convince them this literally doesn't make sense. Please take your responsibility to the rest of the Netherlands and keep going on with this department. And as I said before, we have an alternative plan, so we still have hope that that is financially viable. So
so you're still hoping that someone will have a serious look at this plan that you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I also think it's very strange that people don't immediately understand how important earth sciences is, because we are literally all living on this planet. Everything we use comes from this planet. Everything we do, every threat from this planet, like floodings and climate change and sea level rise, is everything we study here.
Yeah.
And then they want to close this down.
Yeah.
And it also feels like a term of short-minded decision, and
Very
people
much.
don't look into the future like this.
And it's actually a fun thing. One of the things we learn as earth scientists is to think long term, is to think both in long time scales, but also in space. And one of the issues here is that these decisions are not long-term decisions. These are short-term financial decisions that will have long-term effects. And it's sort of like almost funny that we as earth scientists are the people saying like, okay, no, but please think of the future, because that's what we're used to doing. But yeah, the impact that earth sciences has is also so much further than just climate science. It's such a broad field, and especially that broadness is what makes it so unique and important. Is that we have all these different aspects that we are essentially ensuring the future of the Netherlands, basically.
Right, so another angle to this story is obviously the students, because how many students are studying earth science at the VU right now?
I think all of it combined, so the bachelor's and the master's, is about 150 students or more.
Yeah, so that's definitely not an insignificant number of students in various levels of their degree, I assume.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess my next question is, what is going to happen to these students? Are they going to get, I don't know, are they going to be begging on the street? Are they going to...
Well, also one of the things we don't really know. So the idea is that there's 5 staff members that do mostly teaching, will remain until 2027. All other staff will be fired the 1st of August, so that's very soon. So what the plan is that those 5 staff members will have to do all the education, basically, which, as you can already see, is going to be very difficult. And they will have to do that for 2 years, and then they will be fired as well. So in 2027. And what will happen then? We don't know.
So are there potentially students that will simply have to switch degrees, or?
There's a lot of talk about the VU sort of hopes that we all go to Utrecht. The VU hopes that we all sort of like give up and are like, okay, we'll just enroll in Utrecht, and so they don't have the responsibility for us anymore. But for the bachelor, they have the responsibility until 2030 actually, to have this educational program. As you can see, that's going to be very difficult without any staff members.
A little tricky, I guess.
It's very, very tricky.
You can watch Gio's show, but that only gets you so far.
So there's a lot of questions about that. Also, those 5 staff members can do some parts of the bachelor, but not of the master, geology, geochemistry. And also the theses are not possible. So they also say you will have to either go to Utrecht or find someone anywhere that has your expertise and ask them, please be my supervisor.
Yeah, but in some cases that doesn't even work, because there's whole expertises that are gone.
Yeah.
Right. So there are like, we do a lot here in Utrecht, but we don't do everything.
No, and you also don't, like, you're also very busy, I assume. You also have your own students and all of that. And there's also people that are currently in the middle of their thesis that have their deadline in December. And that means that halfway through, their supervisor will be fired. Their labs will not be in use anymore. And these students also ask, okay, please, how can I finish my thesis? And the current response is that they will look at individual study paths. But for us, that feels almost like a sort of like magic word. It's like, okay, we don't know. We will have a study path for you.
It's a journey.
Yeah, it's a journey. It's something that we will explore together.
But I'm assuming, like, for you, you're at the end of your student career anyway, let's say.
That's true.
So for you, it's in that regard, it might not be that big a deal.
That's true.
But like, let's say for you, because you're a first-year master student, has this ever occurred to you that something like this could potentially? I mean, you're not at the VU, but still, like, has this occurred to you that, you know, the whole department could be affected in some way like this?
Well, no, because I never even thought about that it was a possibility for a university to cut a department. I didn't know that was an option. And I also feel like if you start your education, then it feels like they are obliged to you
They
to let you
are.
finish.
Yeah,
So
they are by law. So that's complicated. They
So
are
they actually are.
they are obliged by law to have us get our degree at the VU. And they are obliged by law to do that until 2030 again. So there's also actually a new group of students that will start next year because they are legally obliged to still have this bachelor's program. But the VU is sort of telling them, hi, please don't start here because we cannot make sure that you have the quality of education that we used to have. But instead of working on that quality of education and therefore not firing all your staff, they just say,
crazy
go to Utrecht.
conversation here because the story I'm getting from you is really quite different from what I've been reading in the media. Really, a lot of these decisions don't really have much of a proper explanation. There has not been a proper review of your valid alternative plans. So yeah, we could probably talk about this for another couple of hours, but we are out of time, unfortunately. So yeah, I would really like to thank you very much for coming here. Obviously, you're always welcome to come
Thank you for
again.
having me.
At some point, maybe we'll do another. Like when there's been some more developments, we might actually do another interview. So yeah, thanks a lot. I think it was very interesting. And what would you say to let's say someone who is interested in studying earth science?
I would say study earth sciences. It's good for you and good for the world. No, I think it's very important that people keep studying earth sciences and also keep applying to the VU, because otherwise it's sort of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you just all go to Utrecht instead, then the VU will say like, oh yes, you see now, we don't have to do this program anymore. So that's super complicated. But it's very important that we keep emphasizing the importance of earth sciences anywhere in the Netherlands, basically. Talk to your neighbors, talk to your friends. Do you know about earth sciences? But also...
Knock on your neighbor's door.
knock on your neighbor's door. Are
know
you
what
an earth
petrology
scientist?
is?
But also to stand up for your rights within a university. So that's also one of the main things that we've learned. Don't hand yourself over to the people in charge, because the people in charge just sometimes don't really know what they're doing, I think.
okay, well, I'd just like to thank you for the good work that you've been doing. And it's also very important for me to save earth sciences, of course. So keep it up. And thank you very much.
Thanks. And just for the people watching this, you can always follow our LinkedIn. There we will try to keep the updates posted and stuff like that. You can still sign the petition. We've already reached more than 10,000 10,000 people, which is super important. But we will keep reaching out. We will keep making ourselves heard, because we just will not agree to this. And we will keep fighting for the importance of earth sciences. So thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brecht.